Oh, hey, what's going on, friends? Dave Loughy with Odd Shopper, and we're talking Saturday NFL preseason football. You know the drill, and if you don't know the drill, it's easy. I'm going to do all the research for you, find as much valuable information on these games as humanly possible. Takes me absolutely forever to do so. So hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Greatly appreciated. I'll give you my picks. Then it's up to you whether you want to fade them, you want to tail them, you fade them. I won't hold it against you. But just know, I'm finding everything I can possible to get into these videos so we can at least make somewhat educated decisions on a very volatile and unpredictable betting format, which is preseason football. But that's it. Follow me at Loughy_D, LOUGHY_D. We got 6 games to talk about today, so let's make it happen. All right, first up, Indy at Buffalo, 38-point total. Buffalo, 4.5-point dogs here. Now, Anthony Richardson, we already know that Anthony Richardson's going to get the start Friday night. New head coach for the Colts, Shane Steichen, said that the starters would play around the quarter. My guess is that Minshew plays a quarter as well, and then we get a half of Sam Ehlinger, so that should be fun. But in Buffalo, Sean McDermott already mentioned that Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, they're not going to play. So I would assume that a couple other starters, like big-name starters, aren't going to be on the field, but that all of the other starters would play around the quarter as well. There's some positional battles on defense too, which I think is interesting because that means that we could see a lot of these, starters or fringe starters for Buffalo because they got a pretty deep roster, particularly on defense. You could see those guys going up against Richardson in the first quarter. Look, this guy's got a lot of talent, but there's no denying he's still a project. You're going up against like Buffalo's fringe ones and top twos. That could be relatively difficult. I also think it's reasonable that we project Kyle Allen and Matt Barkley to split the game here for Buffalo. I mean, that's not great. Could be worse, and we'll get to some of those worse ones later. But it's not the best thing in the world. They're neither of them are particularly good, but we can consider this much. They have a combined, believe it or not, 26 regular season starts under their belts. 19 for Allen, 7 for Barkley, and McDermott 12-6 straight up in the preseason, 9-1 over his last 3 years, 12-5-1 all time against the spread. That's interesting. Steichen, no history as a coach here as far as preseason goes, but I think there's a case to be made that Buffalo at plus 4.5 on FanDuel specifically. This is why I tell you, I'm going to beat this into everybody's head until they listen. Make sure you have accounts at as many sports books as possible. It's 3.5 at every other sports book, including Pinnacle right now. It's 4.5 still on FanDuel. I put a link in the description and in the pinned comment. You click that, it takes you to Odd Shopper. It's all of my favorite promos. I got them listed up there. You're getting free money because these books want you to sign up. That's the best part. You're getting great promotions. Some of it's like bet 5, get 150. Others are $1,000 first bet insurance. Get all your money back up to $1,000 if you lose your first bet. Regardless, free money. And now you have accounts at as many books as possible to always get the best odds and the best lines. So please listen to me when I tell you this. It makes a huge difference in the NFL. Link in the description and pin comment to that. Find the ones you love. Get on them. But right now at FanDuel, plus 4.5, 3.5 everywhere else. If I'm taking the points when it comes to the Buffalo Bills here, I'm going to take the 4.5 instead of the 3.5. Now, the only risk we run here is that Steichen decides to play Minshew longer than a quarter, but he's seen plenty of Minshew. He was the offensive coordinator in Philly. So my guess is that next week Minshew gets the start, plays the first quarter, and Richardson the second quarter. Next up, we got Tennessee and Chicago. Tennessee 3.5-point dogs against the Bears, 37-point total here. So there's an interesting wrinkle for this game. Assistant head coach and defensive line coach Terrell Williams, not Mike Vrabel, is going to be coaching this game for the Titans. Take that for what it's worth. Like, is there a narrative here? He wants to win this game, more desire to win this game as the acting head coach to prove his worth. Maybe. I'm not personally going to put any stock into that. Plus, Mike Vrabel wouldn't say who was starting against the Bears. But in week 1 of last season, it was Malik Willis and Logan Woodside splitting the game. My guess is we get a half from Willis and a half from Will Levis. Like, that just makes the most sense. And in Chicago, Matt Eberflus said that Justin Fields and the starters will play. He didn't say how much, though. My guess is you get anywhere from a drive to a quarter, depending on how things are going, right? Like if they struggle early on out of the gate, maybe you get a full quarter from them. I mean, getting a quarter from these starters would be huge, but I still think the Chicago Bears have the advantage regardless. Here's what I mean. So, well, first of all, Eberflus 3-0 straight up in his first season as a head coach, 3-0 against the spread, whatever, small sample. Vrabel 6-8 straight up, 5-7-2 against the spread. I don't think much changes with Terrell Williams at the helm this week. But we do know that Fields and Chicago starters are an upgrade over Malik Willis or Will Levis. But I don't think that P.J. Walker and Nathan Peterman are an actual downgrade from those two quarterbacks who are likely to be splitting this one for the Tennessee Titans. So Bears -3.5 is where I'd look here. Under 37 also seems to make sense, especially since I don't think Fields gets a ton of playing time in this one. Next up, New York Jets +3.5 at Carolina, 37-point total here as well. All right, so here, another interesting game, right? Like I said, I'll give you guys all the information I can find. Do with it as you please. I'll always give you my picks, but do with it as you please. Maybe you think I'm a dummy, that's fine. But the information I'm getting is verifiably true. Unless it's Andy Reid talking, and then in that case, we have no idea. Frank Reich was adamant that his starters are going to play this preseason game when he was asked by the media. And to paraphrase what he said, basically he's saying that they have new coaches, they have a new scheme, right? They have new players, and they're in a different spot than other teams who can just, afford to rest their starters. They have the luxury of doing that. They've been together for a while. They know what they've got. I wouldn't be shocked to see the starters play a good amount in this game, outside of Miles Sanders. He tweaked his hammy. He's probably not going to play. No, he's not going to. There's no reason they would play Miles Sanders here. Plus, they know what they have in him anyway. And Andy Dalton's backing up Bryce Young, too. So there's a chance that he plays a quarter or more. My guess is probably around a quarter. These teams just had a joint practice this week. They had two of them, but they canceled one due to inclement weather and a soggy field. But knowing that Aaron Rodgers isn't expected to play for the Jets, and why the hell would Robert Saleh play him? They have 4 preseason games too, instead of 3 this year because they played the Hall of Fame game. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Robert Saleh rest the starters. And then you get a lot of Tim Boyle. Chris Streveler's on the IR. They waived him with the injury and no one claimed him, and now he's back on the IR. So that's that. Plus, he didn't look very good in the Hall of Fame game. I thought he'd be better. He crushed in 2022. But it's probably some Zach Wilson and then a lot of Tim Boyle here. That doesn't look great. Yeah, Robert Saleh has an impressive preseason record, 5-1-1. And we know as well that these hard knocks teams haven't performed all that great. But he's 5-2 against the spread. But Frank Reich's a respectable 8-6 straight up, 9-5 against the spread. I do like the Panthers here because they actually have a lot of things that they have to figure out in the preseason. The Jets have some question marks on offense and defense, but not nearly as many as the Panthers. And they have an additional preseason game to sort it out. So my lean here would be the Panthers -3.5. Then you got Jacksonville -4 at Dallas at the Cowboys, 37.5-point total. Doug Peterson said he's playing his starters this week. Not a huge surprise. He did it in week 2 last preseason. They had 4 preseason games, right? So this is basically their week 1. Since they had the Hall of Fame game last year. But the starters played the whole first quarter, and it ended with a touchdown drive. So I think the way a lot of these coaches play, if Trevor Lawrence went out there, drove down the field, and they scored a touchdown on the first drive, would I be shocked that Doug Peterson pulls them after one drive? Honestly, I wouldn't. We've seen a lot of coaches do that before. But then C.J. Beathard played the second quarter, and Jake Luton played the entire second half. So something similar makes sense here, but that would be with Nathan Rourke playing the second half instead of Luton because he's not there anymore. I mean, Peterson historically just hasn't really given a shit about the preseason, at least not over the last however many seasons that he's coached. He did his first couple of years, but then he just stopped. He's 2-10 over his last 3 seasons as a head coach in the preseason. But Mike McCarthy hasn't really cared either, and he's not likely to play his starters. He said he's leaning towards no when asked about playing the starters. To me, that's a resounding no, but, maybe something weird happens and he changes it up. I think we'll see a lot of Cooper Rush and Will Grier probably split this game. I'm not personally betting this one, but if I did, I'd go Dallas +4, maybe even Dallas money line. You probably get better value on that. and under 37.5 here. Wouldn't shock me if Trevor Lawrence and company don't get the whole first quarter, but if they do, it won't be more of that. And then you're going to see a lot of Nathan Rourke in this game as well. That would be my assumption. Philly and Baltimore. Philly, 4.5-point road dogs, 35.5-point total. Here we go. I mean, I almost hate talking about this because John Harbaugh's Ravens are back in the preseason again, as every team is. And we all know what that means. If you don't and you're new to preseason betting, well, listen to this. John Harbaugh has won 23 straight preseason games and is 21-2 against the spread over that span. That is not me misspeaking. That is real. He's won 23 straight preseason games and he's 21-2 against the spread over that span. I mean, what the hell are you supposed to do with that? It's honestly absurd. And I swear, one day you're going to get some overzealous young coach that makes it his life's mission just to knock off John Harbaugh in the preseason, even if that means his team goes 2-15 in the regular season. Won't even care. But the line moved to 6, then back to 4.5. At 4.5, our hands are kind of tied. Like, in my opinion, this is a bet Ravens or don't bet it at all type spot. You hate to go with the public, especially in a spot where even people who don't know a damn thing about the preseason are like, hey, you got to bet the Ravens. But how do you bet against what we've seen out of the Ravens? Like, the only way you do is just to be contrarian here. And at that point, I'd probably just not bet it. Like, last year, it was obvious that Vegas wasn't just going to make the Ravens 2-point favorites every game. Week 1, it looked like that, and then it changed. And then Harbaugh ended up, they won all of them, but they covered only 2. I don't think they covered week 3. I ended up going with just like money line parlay, and I don't like to do that. But I ended up going, I think, week 3, Ravens-Giants money line parlay. That hit. Ravens didn't cover the spread, but the bet won. It's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, Nick Sirianni isn't planning on playing his starters. Why the hell would he? I don't understand why he would. Like, this team's returning from a Super Bowl trip. They have joint practices coming up next week before a matchup with the Browns. They got plenty of time to see what's going on with these guys, and they know who their starters are. But, like, Marcus Mariota probably gets a lot of work. The only thing is Tyler Huntley, Josh Johnson, and all the backups for Baltimore are kind of archetypes. Like, they're in the mold of Lamar Jackson. They're nowhere near as good as him, but they can kind of function in that offense. You also have Todd Monken. I don't know what we're going to get out of him as the new offensive coordinator, but yeah, it's tough. I mean, here's my final thoughts on this game. It's just not always going to be as easy as bet the Ravens spread in the preseason. It's never going to be that easy. So if I'm betting this, yeah, it would be the Ravens because I'm not betting the Eagles. That might be even crazier. But I'd love to find the money line piece to pair with them. I like it, and I'll have a video coming out on Sunday for this as well. But I don't mind pairing it with the Saints here, -125. I think that's a really interesting spot. I just don't love laying points. Eventually, you're not gonna get them covering this. Vegas will wise up to this, even if they limit how much you can bet in the preseason. You know what I mean? All right, and our last game, Chargers and the Rams. Chargers +3, 33-point total. This game is a wild one. So I remember it well from last season because I bet the under on this game in week 1. And it was a real low 30s total like this one. Might have even been lower than this. It might have even been like 31 or 32. Probably my mistake. But they combined for 51 points. And anyone who saw that coming is lying through their teeth. I liked the under because Brandon Staley and Sean McVay have historically treated the preseason like it's a practice in July, right? They just haven't cared. But man, was I completely wrong about this. And it's funny because the game totals for the games that these teams played in the preseason last year were 51. It was this game, 44, 23. That was a Rams week 3 game, I think, 50 and 37. But in this game, like, you're expecting to see Eason Stick and Max Duggan, a 7th round rookie from TCU. They're going to get all the snaps for the Chargers, unless for some reason Brandon Staley decides to play Herbert, but that's not happened before. I don't see why he would. But here's where the twist comes into play. Listen to this. Sean McVay addressed the media the other day and he said, it's going to be very different than what you guys are accustomed to. Remember, Sean McVay never plays his starters, even his second string guys for that matter, in the preseason. He said, We haven't decided exactly, but we've got to get guys ready to go. There's a lot of players on this team that haven't had the opportunity to suit up and play real tackle football that we're going to be counting on against Seattle. It's going to be a very different approach. Then he went on to say, the guys that haven't, or the guys that have been big contributors that have played a lot of snaps, will tilt towards being smart with them. But for the most part, there's going to be a lot of guys who are playing and very few guys who won't be. Take that for what you want, honestly, because what a difficult situation that is to try and, hash out. So my take on this really is that we're not going to be seeing guys like Stafford. We're not going to be seeing Cooper Kupp, obviously. We're not going to be seeing Aaron Donald. But it won't just be the back of the roster and all the guys on the bubble anymore. And don't expect to see key starters out there, but I think it's real reasonable for McVay to take this more seriously than he has in the past, especially with how terrible they played last year and how many injured starters they had and how bad the team was behind those starters when they were looking to win games in the regular season. So I think you're going to see a lot of fringe starters and even like low-end starters that are going to be on the field. And McVay's used one quarterback in week one a lot, like Bryce Perkins. Bryce Perkins played the entire preseason 2 years ago. I think that could change here. And we get Brett Rippon and a half from Stetson Bennett, the round 4 rookie out of Georgia. So with how little Brandon Staley cares and how Sean McVay might be taking this a little more seriously than he has in the past and actually playing some guys that are fringe starters, I'll lean Rams -3 here. And I'll go over 33 just because it's such a low number. It's so much lower than every other number on this slate. That's just a feel for me. I don't have a ton to back it up other than going under on these super low totals last year kind of killed us. So I'm going to go opposite on this one. But hey, I appreciate you guys hanging out as always. And hit that thumbs up, subscribe before you go. And remember, all the best promos in the link in the description. Get your free money and make sure you're never missing out on the best odds and the best lines. That's the way to play this all preseason and into the regular season. We'll see you back here tomorrow for some Sunday preseason. 2 games on that slate. Peace.